10 Turkey Energy Outlook Recommendations for a More Secure, Efficient, Competitive, Technology-Oriented and Sustainable Energy Future. An attractive investment framework to mobilize energy investments. Faster progress towards competitive power and natural gas markets. Increased renewables and nuclear power with more flexibility in the power grid. Increased energy and fuel efficiency across all sectors. Strong policy initiatives to exploit the energy efficiency potential in buildings and industry. Faster uptake of electric vehicles and Turkey's recharging infrastructure and faster retirement of older vehicles. Increased modal shifts from road to rail and marine as well as a data-driven urban transportation planning. Sustained exploration and production (EP) efforts and investments. Increased uptake of digitalization and advanced data analytics. Increased innovation, R&D and manufacturing of advanced energy technologies. Please visit IICEC's website to reach report.
Sabancı Üniversitesi Uluslararası Enerji ve İklim Merkezi IICEC, alanında öncü, Türkiye enerji sektörüne detaylı bir bakış sunan Turkey Energy Outlook, Türkiye Enerji Görünümü çalışmasını yayınladı. Türkiye Enerji Görünümü TEO, Türkiye enerji sektörü için bir ilk. Bağımsız, objektif ve örnek bir çalışma. TEO, Türkiye enerji sektörünün detaylı bir envanteriyle ve 2040 yılına kadar olan dönem için senaryo analizleriyle oluşturuldu. Kamu, sanayi, akademi başarı üçgeni içerisinde paydaşların güçlü katılımlarını içeriyor. Çalışmada güvenli, verimli, rekabetçi, teknoloji odaklı ve sürdürülebilir enerji geleceği için 10 öneri yer alıyor. Türkiye Enerji Görünümü daha güçlü bir enerji geleceğini destekliyor.
"10 Turkey Energy Outlook Recommendations for a More Secure, Efficient, Competitive, Technology-Oriented and Sustainable Energy Future. An attractive investment framework to mobilize energy investments. Faster progress towards competitive power and natural gas markets. Increased renewables and nuclear power with more flexibility in the power grid. Increased energy and fuel efficiency across all sectors. Strong policy initiatives to exploit the energy efficiency potential in buildings and industry. Faster uptake of electric vehicles and Turkey's recharging infrastructure and faster retirement of older vehicles. Increased modal shifts from road to rail and marine as well as a data-driven urban transportation planning. Sustained exploration and production (EP) efforts and investments. Increased uptake of digitalization and advanced data analytics. Increased innovation, R&D and manufacturing of advanced energy technologies. Please visit IICEC's website to reach report.
Sabancı Üniversitesi Uluslararası Enerji ve İklim Merkezi IICEC, alanında öncü, Türkiye enerji sektörüne detaylı bir bakış sunan Turkey Energy Outlook, Türkiye Enerji Görünümü çalışmasını yayınladı. Türkiye Enerji Görünümü TEO, Türkiye enerji sektörü için bir ilk. Bağımsız, objektif ve örnek bir çalışma. TEO, Türkiye enerji sektörünün detaylı bir envanteriyle ve 2040 yılına kadar olan dönem için senaryo analizleriyle oluşturuldu. Kamu, sanayi, akademi başarı üçgeni içerisinde paydaşların güçlü katılımlarını içeriyor. Çalışmada güvenli, verimli, rekabetçi, teknoloji odaklı ve sürdürülebilir enerji geleceği için 10 öneri yer alıyor. Türkiye Enerji Görünümü daha güçlü bir enerji geleceğini destekliyor.
Turkey Energy Outlook recommendations for a more secure, efficient, competitive, technology-oriented and sustainable energy future. An attractive investment framework to mobilize energy investments. Faster progress towards competitive power and natural gas markets. Increased renewables and nuclear power with more flexibility in the power grid. Increased energy and fuel efficiency across all sectors. Strong policy initiatives to exploit the energy efficiency potential in buildings and industry. Faster uptake of electric vehicles and Turkey's recharging infrastructure and faster retirement of older vehicles. Increased modal shifts from road to rail and marine as well as a data-driven urban transportation planning. Sustained exploration and production (EP) efforts and investments. Increased uptake of digitalization and advanced data analytics. Increased innovation, R&D and manufacturing of advanced energy technologies. Please visit IICEC's website to reach report.
Dr. Fatih Birol, President of the International Energy Agency, distinguished board members of IICEC, distinguished ambassadors, councils general, representatives of the business world, academicians, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished members of the press. Welcome back to a new IICEC conference after the pandemic. IICEC, at the age of 11, produces reports and research work, and from the very first day since 2011, has been holding international conferences, 6 of them indeed, 18 roundtable meetings, and more than 18 webinars. In the printed also press and the media, more than 7,000 news covers took place. In the last quarter of 2021, Clean Energy, Women Leaders in Science and Technology conference took place, and after that, pandemic outbreak started, but IICEC continued to work without losing pace. In 2020 and 21, a strong IICEC climate webinar series were produced, addressing to more, in average, 2,000 attendees. The energy and climate outcomes of the COVID-19 pandemic, World Federation scientists collaborated with the Nuclear Energy Conference and also the Turkish Climate Webinar, following which the Turkey Energy Outlook 2020 report preparations took place, and with the participation of Mr. Minister, the special launching event for Turkey Energy Outlook 2020 took place. Then, with the attendance of Ernst Moyles, the former Minister of Energy of the United States, attended a meeting with the new United States and EU agenda meeting. Swedish and Austria embassies also attended the Turkey Energy Outlook, Energy Market and Investments report findings were presentations. Minister of Energy and Natural Resources, Mr. Dönmez, also attended the Today and the Future of Renewables in Turkey and Around the Globe webinar, discussing the high potential of Turkey and opportunities. Net zero emission future and implications on Turkey webinar took place with the attendance of the President of International Energy Agency and President of IICEC, and we've heard about the concept of net zero. In that webinar, Deputy Minister of Energy, Mr. Alparslan Bayraktar, made a presentation. These webinars, the IICEC webinars, 6 of them indeed, was honored with the attendance of Dr. Fatih, and we appreciate his attendance. Today in this meeting, we will be discussing about the global energy and climate trends and implications on Turkey. Unfortunately, we couldn't get together back in 2020 physically, but we convened on digital platform. But once again, we are pleased to be able to host you in this platform as IICEC. This webinar being realized with the pandemic measures, I think is quite timely in the post-Glasgow era. Taking a brief look at the program, we will have Mrs. Güler Sabancı to make the opening remarks, and then Yaşam Sargun, the chair of IICEC, will take the floor as a guest speaker. Following her, we will have Dr. Fatih Birol keynote presentation, the president of the International Energy Agency, and then we'll have the Q&A session after the keynote. During the Q&A, Dr. Fatih Birol will be available to your questions, and then we'll take a family photo on stage. And we will continue with the perspective of the Business World panel, moderated by the Country Director of Shell Turkey, Ahmet Erdem, and Sinan Ak from Zorlu Energy, Erkan Kafadar from Borissan Holding, Merve Öztunç from TPS, and Hakan Yıldırım from Sanko Energy, and Kıvanç Zaimler from Sabancı Holding will be taking the floor. Taking this initiative, I would like to also say that we have the target of increasing the number of women speakers in IICEC conferences. When the panels take place only with the attendance of male speakers, probably will be criticized a lot at the social media. Stanford Energy Institute, Texas A&M University, collaborating with Sabancı University, IICEC, also provides a sponsorship to clean energy platform. And as we say, Clean Energy and Women Leaders in Science and Technology platform is being a very popular event in the sector with high attendance of women. And we are aiming at and supporting the number of female leaders in the sector, and would like to remind that the IICEC board is also open to the attendance of more women. Renewable energy and net zero are the concepts that will define the future. The implications of the global energy and climate trends will be discussed in this conference, and these concepts will be discussed as key concepts. IICEC board members, Borisal EMBW, Enerjisa, Eren Holding, Sanko Energy, Shell, SOCAR, and Zorlu Energy are the main sponsors. We are thankful to their support, and I also would like to express our appreciation to you as the attendees. I would like to invite now to the floor the founding chair of Sabancı University Board of Trustees, Madame Sabancı. Well, good morning, Dr. Birol, distinguished stakeholders of the energy and climate circles. On behalf of IICEC, Sabancı University Istanbul International Center for Energy and Climate, I would like to welcome you all and would like to thank you very much for being here to discuss the recent updates on the global energy and climate trends. In this conference, we will have distinguished speakers from the sector who will be discussing about the climate trends and relevant implications on Turkey. Welcome. Now, in this time where the effects of the pandemic still persist, we have taken, as mentioned by our announcer, we've taken all measures, and we are together as a hybrid fashion. We have 200 people gathering in the hall, although this is a hall for 600 people. Although it's possible to have attendance on an online platform, I would like to embrace all the participants who are here with us physically and online. As we get into winter in the Northern Hemisphere, we are discussing updated issues like the increasing oil prices, and in this conference, net zero emission perspective, energy supply and demand dynamics, and energy security, and essentially clean energy transformation will be discussed, particularly within the framework of the future of our planet and social as well as economic development. These are quite critical issues for all of our future. A more sustainable future can only be achieved by competitiveness, clean energy, and support to the shift to clean energy, thanks to energy policies that are based on sustainable value and innovative business models and clean energy models. In the field of energy and climate, the recent developments will be discussed within the perspective of the future, and we will hear in a minute Dr. Fatih Birol speaking on that. Indeed, we'll have the privilege of hearing this theme from Dr. Birol with his presidency. Dr. Birol, I'm sure, is going to pave the way for the International Energy Agency for clean energy. Within this year, Dr. Birol subsequently announced very important reports for clean energy. Also for laying down the roadmap, G7 statesmen and COP26 climate summit president also raised a claim, and upon that claim, net zero by 2050 report was prepared by the International Energy Agency, laying down the international climate targets and the goals that will be accomplished to have a clean future. So the report indeed lays down important messages and recommendations to decision makers as to how the future will need to be shaped. In terms of energy and climate, Glasgow COP26 summit is the most important event in the sector. Dr. Birol has just returned from the summit and has been kind enough to join us in our conference. And we're thankful to you, sir, and I cannot wait to hear you speaking with your perspective, sir. Times 100 list provides this year the only Turkish person as Dr. Birol, so we are extremely honored and we're proud to have him representing us because he's been the only Turk on the list. Thank you. But beyond that, of course, we appreciate him because as the honorary chairperson, he has been voluntarily and sincerely contributing to the evolution of IICEC. It's been 11 years. Thank you, sir. Once again, as Doğan also emphasized, he really has a very important contribution to us, inspirational leader. And the other speakers are, as you would see from the agenda, the perspectives of the business world. These are the competent leaders of the business world and will hold a panel with their participation. I would like to thank them in advance for their contribution, and the panel will also be moderated by Mr. Erdem. I'm really thankful to him as well. As you know, ladies and gentlemen, at Sabancı University, we've been prioritizing energy and climate issues for quite a long time, and IICEC has been designed as energy and climate center, having faith in the fact that these two themes cannot be separated from each other. Safer and also economic growth and social growth and wealth can only be achieved by a proper understanding of energy and climate. IICEC, having reached the age of 11, pleasantly has been contributing to that target. Doğan covered briefly what has been done so far. Last year, IICEC, for the first time, published the Energy Outlook study for Turkey last year. I really care about it because it's going to be the shared roadmap for all the sectoral stakeholders. And we've been receiving quite positive feedback. And it's, I believe, as they say, it's a reference work, which is really pleasing for us. Another major project for IICEC is to also present a report for electrical vehicles outlook in Turkey. It's extremely important, and I do expect the study to be shared with the public by December, as I hear. In that report, we will be also taking a look at the e-mobility ecosystem growth perspective, the status of electrical vehicles in Turkey with the opportunities attached to it. In the period to follow, IICEC will keep on updating us on the major dynamics of energy and climate. Before concluding my opening remarks, one more thing that I'd like to share with you. IICEC Executive Board deserves a special appreciation to Borusan EnBW and Enerjisa, Eren Holding, Sanko Energy, Shell, Sokar, and Zorlu Energy. You all deserve an appreciation for the support that you've been extending to IICEC, for the long-term support, I mean, for its evolution. In these kind of issues, the support has always been limited to short-term, but yet yet our counterparts here, our stakeholders, have provided us a long-term support in the field of energy and climate, being able to manage risks, turning them into opportunities, and shaping up a cleaner and safer energy future will be discussed on the basis of issues that will be discussed today in the conference. Hope that it's going to be a fruitful conference for all parties. And one more concluding remarks about Sabancı University. Professor Yusuf Leblebici, our president of the university, is with us today. And our ultimate goal is to have the Sabancı campus at net zero. And this is the first time that we're sharing this with you. We've already started working on it, and the outcomes will be shared later. Hope it's going to be a fruitful conference for all of us and the entire energy world, and would like to welcome all participants one by one. Thank you.
Founding Chair, Sabancı University Board of Trustees, Güler Sabancı, thank you very much for your opening address. Yes, right by IICEC, we're preparing the electric vehicle outlook report, and in particular, one of our colleagues was working hard on this. I also would like to thank to my colleague Bora for his support for the organization of this event. Now, as the guest speaker of the conference, Ayşem Sargın, Chair of IICEC, International Investors Association. Floor is yours. Executive Director of International Energy Agency, Fatih Birol, distinguished members of the Executive Committee of IICEC, very distinguished representatives of the academia, the press, and the media. You know, climate change is an agenda, is at a turning point. That's quite a timely conference, and I would like to thank to Istanbul International Center for Energy and Climate for kindly inviting me to this event. As representing IICEC, International Investors Association, I would like to touch upon the global developments from the perspective of the investors in terms of environment and, again, the climate and global energy. As IICEC, we are representing 85% of the investments. As you all know, in particular, speaking about global energy and climate, these issues are of critical importance in terms of our members. These are very ambitious again, companies, and for sustainability of their investments in Turkey. It's extremely important also for competitive edge of Turkey for more investments. Therefore, energy and climate is so important. Very briefly, I would like to share with you that in the last 3 years, there's a decline in the investments in terms of energy, but in 2020, there is actually, in general, a 25% of a drop in investments. Of course, to better understand the outlook of the decline, the FDI, for example, from 1.5 trillion US dollars dropped to $1 trillion at the global band. And in the first half of 2021, these figures started to recover. And in particular, when we look at the same year of the same period of the 2019, it is $852 billion worth at increase, which is so pleasing. Of course, looking at the performance back after the COVID, when we look at, for example, the very first years of the pandemic, most of the developed countries experienced a decline in investments. For the developing countries, we were happy that they are not that much affected. But looking at the recovery period, the developed countries recovered much faster. And when compared to the other countries, they attracted more investment. Therefore, as an investment climate, countries that have certain advantages recovered faster when compared to the other countries. From a longer perspective, I would say, looking at the profit margins in the developing countries, they are getting close to the developed countries, especially in terms of return on investment after the pandemic. There's actually, the gap is closing, and therefore the investors are attracted by more the developed countries. I think the most positive thing is about the green transformation. In particular, it actually becomes much more on the topic, in particular, that also leads to investments. As you all know, also in parallel to COP26, this is actually a sustainable recovery that we are speaking about right now. Therefore, the future investments will mostly be focusing on the green transformation. The energy industry, and looking at especially the investments for 2021, renewable energy investments for the first time increase the investments on the fossil fuels. It goes beyond that. It's a paradigm shift, especially since 2011 has been ongoing, and we also have very positive implications also for our country. However, our topic today is not only new energy investments, but mostly our topic is the steps that we should take in terms of climate. There's actually a huge need for financing, and in particular, looking at the developing countries and the developed countries, there are several emerging challenges, and they also have to be handled together with the political agenda. And of course, the risks are showing us that the future years would be a bit of a challenge. Of course, for climate change and after the pandemics, it's very important for global stakeholders to cooperate. That's the key to success. Of course, there are some protectionist approaches after the pandemics, and they are also increasing somehow irreversibly, and therefore there is no time to lose in terms of the climate change. I think this is one of the major risks ahead of it. I think the topic that we should focus on is actually sustainable recovery, and to be as comprehensive and inclusive as possible. I think all countries beyond economic growth should set some success criteria and set some goals and be very innovative in terms of reaching those goals. And in doing so, of course, there are some countries that cannot compromise from growth, economic growth, just like Turkey. Of course, least all countries at the same time have their own challenges, but how we can make sustainability attractive, how we can actually encourage at a global level. There is actually no formula that fits everyone, and I think especially those who are at the front of the race can possibly give support to the others who are at the back. But overall speaking, I think we're focusing on three pillars. And when we said energy investments, renewable energy investments, for example, should become a mainstream investment. This is the case. The second thing is that the transformation is affecting all industries. Therefore, there is actually going to be a demand that also will support the energy. And lastly, looking at, in general, the international investments, they also will be sensitive towards it. And the countries that actually is the greenest will attract more investment. So they actually will have so many advantages from this perspective. I think international investments at the same time would contribute significantly to green ecosystem and will act as a catalyst. Especially global companies at their own headquarters apply several norms. At the same time, looking at the supply chain and the countries that their investment, they all require a rapid transformation. Especially transformation must be focused on. We should have some incentives or new generation financing models that are focusing on the green energy. And looking at the investment trends, in particular, there are so many liabilities by the Green Deal, and therefore it's very important. There is actually the potential that the investment appetite will be affected from this. I believe that the private sector will be covering so many of the liabilities, which is, I would say, something fair to say. I think there must be a balance, especially in Green Deal, providing some incentives and some financial models. These are very important for sustainability of the investments, and they're extremely important for reaching that green transformation. After the pandemics, as you all know, there's polarization and protectionist approaches. This actually affects the foreign trade and investments of so many countries. I believe that it must be much more incentive, and at the same time, this is actually the need for this. So, because if we really would like to have a green transformation that's successful, we need this. Looking at the international investments in Turkey, I think this continues to be under the potential of our country. Our goal is to get 1.5% of the global investment inflow, but this is under 1% right now. And I think it's all about the perception. There are so many factors, of course. In particular, stability and predictability. These are the main things for this perception. And in the post-pandemic era, there is also going to be a new economy, and for competitiveness of Turkey, it's so important. Digitalization, green transformation, we have to take so many steps. And I think these are also success criteria for Turkey. Europe is our main trade partner. They, for example, we have to conform to the Green Deal. It's not only for our trade purposes, but at the same time, there is going to be a trend for the approximation of the global markets. This is going to be the choice of the investors, which is also so important for Turkey. Therefore, in the near future, Turkey actually become a part of the Paris Convention. So these are the major steps taken and very important. And we have to keep our competitive edge at the global level. And we should not waste time. And we have to take the necessary actions immediately. Ms. Sabancı in her talk and Fatih Birol in his previous talks mentioned so many times that in the steps that we should take immediately, we cannot tolerate any time loss. In again, COP26, it's been discussed a lot, the severity of the issue, the urgency of the issue, it's quite obvious. These are the things that are affecting us at the personal, corporate level, country level. So if we really would like to keep our competitive edge for investments at the global level, we actually have to continue for international collaboration. We have so many representatives here today, and they are the leaders of the action and our partners. Thank you very much for being here, and wish you a successful conference.
Ms. Ayşe Sargun, thank you very much for this contribution. Now I'd like to invite Dr. Fatih Birol as the President, the Executive Director of International Energy Agency, for the keynote presentation, please. Distinguished participants, my friends, colleagues, I'd like to extend my warmest regards to all of you. Firstly, Madame Sabancı, thank you very much for hosting us here in this hall. Thank you, it's a privilege. It's been 11 years, really a long time. IICEC, having a center as such established in Turkey, was for the first time brought up by Mrs. Sabancı. I recall that very well that day. Maybe you cannot, but I do. Putting climate next to energy was really the aspiration of her, showing how visionary person she is, because currently everybody discusses energy from the perspective of climate. The video you have shown for the last 11 years, I think, is remarkable. You know, there is the song, who's been here, who's been there. You know, there was the Minister of Oil of Saudi Arabia who travels rarely abroad, to the American Minister of Power of the United States. from the CEOs of international companies to political characters in Turkey, they all presented themselves at the previous events of IICEC, showing how influential the center is. And inevitably, I take a look at myself and have seen how my color, hair color changed in a year from brown to gray. Well, ladies and gentlemen, today there is one thing that I will try to do in this keynote presentation. First, I will cover the energy markets globally today, which is going through a volatile phase, and I will take a look at the reasons for the volatility there, how we expect a progression. But rather than that, I will be focusing on the long-term changes that we're expecting in energy and climate, with the potential of implications on Turkey and the rest of the world. And at the end, if any, I will be more than happy to receive your questions. At the outset, I would like to just say that I will present you my perspective of energy markets, and we'll take a look at the current situation. But there is this absolute trend which needs to be highlighted at first. A new world energy system is in the horizon right now. In the last 3 decades, the global energy market is by 80% based on fossil fuels, including coal, natural gas, and oil. It has never changed in the last 30 years, but now the change has been kicked off. And the change has started and is just on the way quite quickly, but actually we do not know, as time will show, how the pace of that change will actually be. Indeed, it will be defined by Glasgow and the government decisions to follow to identify the pace of that change. Yes, a new energy system is on the horizon, but before looking into that, I think we need to keep an eye on the current situation. Natural gas prices in Europe, in Asia, relatively in America, there has been a pressure of prices upwards. We are speaking about a $25 range of prices in Europe. I mean, this is something that is considered as, beyond normal, because in historical evolution, it raised from $5 to $25 right now. And even $25 is the lowered level versus a few months ago. What are the reasons for that? There are several reasons that we need to name, all getting together. Number one is that the global economy in 2021 has gone through a 6% growth. And this is the level which is the highest economic growth of the last 5 decades in this world. There are factors, of course, triggering this growth, mainly energy, unfortunately, is based on fossil fuels, such as coal, natural gas, and oil. I mean, there has been a boost in demand in all of these segments of fossil fuels. Basically, for the following reason: since we had a downturn in the global economy back in 2020, many countries announced economic wrap-up and also support packages. And I remember quite well that we said back in 2020 that if these packages do not favor clean energy methods sufficiently, without sufficient incentives for such, we will be experiencing both a an increase of the global energy prices in 2021 and an elevation in emissions. Currently, all countries of the world, United States, Europe, China, Canada, all of them are announcing $17 trillion of economic improvement packages. Unfortunately, within those packages, the share for renewable energy investments is only 3%, quite low. When this is the case, natural gas, coal, and oil demands are growing exponentially. And this is the first factor behind the boost in prices. The second reason for that increase is in some countries, which are important countries, we had to go through some extreme weather conditions, such as in China and in Brazil, we've gone through a severe drought. And maybe you can ask me what relevance there might be, but it's quite relevant because electrical generation of both countries are hydroelectrical related. Therefore, when there is lack of rain, there is a drop down in electricity generation, and to compensate for that, they had to import significant amounts of LNG. Up to 6-fold of the normal imports. And this also led to an impact in the markets. And secondly, in some places, particularly in generation facilities, because of extreme rain and flood, these facilities had to go through some stagnation in generation. One final factor is that in the natural gas generation plants, there have been many planned and unplanned problems. There are also previously planned maintenance activities for 2021 and 2020 were postponed to 21. Actually, there are those previously scheduled for 2021. So altogether, there have been a lot of idle utilization of many plants, as a result of which we have seen a major increase in prices, yet. Now we're coming to the yet part. Neither in natural gas nor in oil there have been a scarcity. No scarcity. Yes, in natural gas and in oil we have sufficient resources, but what is important is to be able to add that up to the markets. We have Russian diplomats, colleagues with us, and in front of them I also would like to say that about 2 months ago I made a press conference and said that if Russia wants, it may increase its gas exports to Europe by 15%, which would relieve the markets as a wave effect. And just a few days later, the distinguished authorities of the Russian government announced that there will be a 17% increase. Immediately as they made the announcement, there was a decline in prices. Now again, Russia has once again announced by Mr. Putin as of November the 8th that gas exports to Europe will increase. If these words become reality, we would expect a decrease in prices in Europe. But one thing, it's never and ever because of the lack of gas, but about availability of gas to market. Now, taking a look at the winter conditions, there are two main factors to define the conditions of energy prices in this winter, Russia, number one, and climate or weather conditions, number two. Russia is the biggest exporter, as you know, and if they would decide to increase their exports, and if winter conditions don't go that harsh, probably we would expect a relative softening in prices. But if the contrary happens, then the expected gas to Europe, if it doesn't get increased, and if there is a cold winter that Europe will suffer, probably gas prices will undergo an increase in Europe, inevitably, because this is somehow related to our country as well. As for oil prices, the same applies. It's at the level of $80 for the moment, but the oil producers do have in their stocks never used 5.5 billion barrel per day of a stock. So again, it's not about availability or investments in oil. That's not because of such, but oil producers should get a decision about opening up the valves, which they don't, because they now have a different attitude for that. So only if they would change their position and would decide to contribute to the global economy, which has already gone out of a downturn, then the expected decline in prices will take place. Once again, would like to highlight here that we have sufficient amount of natural gas plus oil, but the real problem is its presentation to the market. So under normal conditions, as of next year, in the oil markets, we would expect a relief as we do. Now, this is the current situation. This is where we are standing. But rather, I'd like to move on to the structural changes and climate change. Why energy stands together with climate change? A simple question. Because the emissions causing climate change by 80% result from energy. As I said yesterday, when there is a traffic accident, you would discuss the failure, the error of the both parties, and this is something as such. Energy is not a bad thing. It's the best thing in our life. It would serve to make our lives more comfortable, a better experience. Energy also contributes to growth in economy, yet unfortunately, coal, natural gas, and oil at the same time make emissions, leading to climate change. Therefore, quite simply, we can get to the conclusion that the solution for climate change only would start from energy sector. The other solutions would have really 5 to 10% share. So what to do? What to do, as I will say, we need to go through a major transformation in the energy sector. Let me give you some updates on climate change. The most reputable, thousands of scientists everywhere in the world say, human beings, if you want to preserve the climate of the world as today's, if you want to have a world with a similar climate in the future, we should have average maximum 1.5 degrees Celsius increase in the climate. Other than that, if we go beyond it, undoubtedly we will be facing severe problems. Average temperature increase is 1.1 centigrade degree an increase. We're almost there, 1.1 degrees Celsius of an increase in the temperature. And what scientists say is, unless we take the necessary steps, the floods, the storms, wildfires, these kind of disasters will become even more frequent in the near future, and their severity also will be a lot more. So what to do? All the countries of the world should get a conclusion to bring the emissions down to zero by 2050. As Madame Sabancı also referred to in her opening remarks, G7 leaders and COP26 and the climate change summit president, just asked us to make a roadmap as to what the energy world must be by 2050 to bring the emissions down to zero. So we need to identify it. So we set up a large team of people in collaboration with major international agencies, and prepared a roadmap. But believe me, we need so many prerequisites to be accomplished for the true transformation. Some even say, can this really happen? Such a major transformation for the emissions to bring it down to zero. The change must be unprecedented in history. It must be major change. Let me give you an example. The largest solar panel in the world is in India, and it took them 3 years to build the plant. And we need one facility at that size to be established every day in the world. So do you think that is ever possible? Technically, yes, but as referred to by Mrs. Sargon quite well, it takes an investment, and will it be possible for the investments to come to that level? Another example, as we discussed about electric vehicles at the opening, for this huge change to take place, we must have an exponential growth in the sales of electric markets, and in renewable energy, in energy efficiency, we should have an exponential growth. Therefore, yes, we have the roadmap at hand, prepared by us, which is, I have to say, covering all the counterparts. Asian Development Bank, World Bank, major investors who are represented also here as well, international energy companies, governments. They are taking their works as the basis on this report. We are also creating zero-emission maps for particular countries. But what should we do to come to this zero-emission level, which is quite an ambitious target, but a valuable one for all of us? There are 3 pillars, 3 homeworks, on the side of the energy world. Maybe then we can reach that level if we do our homework. Number 1 is something that is quite critical for the world, the timeline, the decade ahead of us by 2030. The clean energy technologies that we're using in the markets globally must be extended to the rest of the world quite quickly. Solar, wind, nuclear, electrical cars, energy efficiency, with all those pillars at hand. The timing must be at triple folds. Therefore, the currently proven and engaged technologies must be utilized at a higher pace. Homework number 1. Homework number 2 is we need to design things that are currently not on the market, but that are still being tried in R&D. The new clean energy technologies that are being tried in labs and in research and development. So as quickly as possible, through innovations, we should get the support of the governments to engage these new technologies into energy generation. What are these? Hydrogen. There are many hydrogen applications, carbon catch technologies and truly developed battery technologies, mini modular nuclear reactors. These are being tried right now, and by streaming money there, by enforcing strategies, we should make sure that the markets will be able to embrace these technologies by 2030 next to the existing technologies, which is not an easy task as well. Homework number 3, unfortunately, is quite inevitable, and it is that the currently used fossil fuels must have a major decline in utilization, starting with coal, followed by oil and natural gas. Because, I mean, these are all challenging tasks, each of them. But if we truly want to reach the zero emission level for each and every one of us, for the entire planet, this is something that we need to do. Human beings must make a preference. And if we want to, if you don't want to endure the consequences of climate change and prevent it from progressing further, we need to accomplish quite almost impossible changes in the world of energy. So we have to make a choice in between these two wings, which is not an easy job. A bit about Glasgow, and then I will finish. Now, all the countries of the world, they have agreed on the Paris Agreement one by one, and in Turkey, we, as of yesterday, made it a part of our legislation, which is quite pleasing. So almost all countries ratified the agreement. Most of the countries do have some targets to reduce their emissions down to zero by 2050. So they all laid down some objectives, some targets to bring the levels down. Adding that up, which we've done, if these countries reach their targets, or in other words, if they would do what they say, this is the important part, the if part is really important. Let's say they did it. What happens? What happens is the temperature in the world will undergo a 1.8 degrees Celsius increase if we all do it. Because, you know, we all make promises, and some major countries like United States, China, India, Russia, and EU, it's really important what they would do. But ladies and gentlemen, this is extremely important for all of our sakes. This 1.8 degree increase in temperature, even if it's not the case, even if it's just a bit higher than 1.8, then from that point onwards, there was a clear-cut message conveyed to investors in Glasgow. And the message is as follows. You, dear investor, from this point onwards, if you continue to invest in fossil fuels, and you can do it as you like, but be cautious because the investment might be a bit risky. The risk factor is in our minds now. Doesn't matter if you believe in climate change or not. Doesn't matter if you like fossil fuels or not. Now, in the heads, in the mindset of the investors, the risk of investing in fossil fuels now has already entered as a parameter into calculations. I think this has been the biggest message, take-home message from Glasgow to investors around the world. I think this needs to be highlighted once. I will finish off with a few more messages. Renewable energy has already been going through a swift evolution, which I think is going to be even faster. It's not about the future. Let me give the figures of last year about the strong growth in renewables. Last year, in the world, all the newly built electrical power plants, by 90% are based on renewables. 90% last year. And the remaining 10% is coal plus natural gas plus and plus. But 90% belongs to renewables for the electrical power plants built last year in the world. The renewables, meaning solar, I think is going to be the new king of energy markets. If you ask me, it's really growing exponentially, and this is going to be the case not only in Europe, but also in India, China, United States, everywhere around the globe. This is number one. And number two is electric vehicles. Well, in 2019, in the world, 2 out of 100 vehicles sold anywhere in the world was electrical in 2019. But as of today, out of every 100 cars sold, 7 of them is electrical. I think the 2 leading countries are China and EU there, and the United States. Upon the new infrastructure law enacted last week by President Biden, $1.1 trillion of subsidies to be created to facilitate and accelerate the electric cars market in the States. So we would expect, again, an exponential growth in the electric cars market around the globe. Last, I would like to touch upon nuclear energy. Nuclear. And anyone who would know me, who would have the chance of talking with me, would know that for many years I have been saying that nuclear energy, if used correctly with correct partners and in correct technology and regulations, I keep saying that nuclear power would be one of the major options for the energy equation. But as you know, after Fukushima, there has been a cool down from the government or from the market in nuclear energy. But one thing I have to say about nuclear energy, I think wind has just turned in the reverse direction, and merely because of the fact that there has been a really rapid increase in energy prices in the last few months, particularly in natural gas. And I do believe that those who make a miscalculation of the natural gas prices, with the increase in the natural gas prices, we once again understand the importance of nuclear energy. Plus, in terms of climate change, we come to the point of understanding that renewables would not suffice, although it's really an important source of energy. So we grasp better that renewables will not be enough for the world by itself. In France, when President Macron came to power, he announced that they will be reducing the share of nuclear power. And you know that France is an important player there. But last week, they announced a totally different position, saying that they would preserve the existing level, plus will be building new ones. United Kingdom is a country that has to grow quite quickly in nuclear energy, and again in the Glasgow meetings they have announced a new nuclear program. And in the United States, the program also covers nuclear energy. In China, they are, quite eager also to grow in that aspect, not being affected by Fukushima at all. And in South Europe, the old technologies, rather than the old and big reactors, now the small, middle, mini reactors are cost effective, and they can be easily built and commissioned and built in an easier and a shorter time. Therefore, in terms of nuclear energy positions of the countries, there has been also a swift, in the perspective of countries. Maybe finally I'd like to refer to coal, and for coal in a few months' time, coal, I think, will not come back to the world. Now it's in a decline that would never be returned to the original position again. One note for Mr. Doğan. 2 years ago, there was the last IICEC conference organized, and I told him then that in terms of the number of female speakers, we need a balance. I told him, I'm really pleased to see today that there are efforts, at least for that. And I'm the executive director of the International Energy Agency currently, but energy is a sector that women are represented at a very low level, but now we have 50-50% for female-male balance in the International Energy Agency. Merve Erdem is also the press advisor of the agency. She would tell you better, but we are now in a balance. Let's get in that position as quickly as we can. Thank you very much for your attention.
Şimdi izin verin.
Now, if I may, and I don't know if time allows, I will be available to your questions because I was told as such at the beginning, and I can receive some questions, and then we will proceed. Yes, sir.
Cemalettin, the Turkish Engineers and Architects Chamber. I'm in charge of the Energy Working Group, and we've been together in several meetings. I'm just going to make a sense of humor here. As you all know, there are two ways, actually. Two ways, also in politics. For example, at Esenler, there are 4 ways. At Kadıköy, 6 ways. So it means that we actually should have different alternatives. And in the presentation that you delivered to us, you mentioned about the fossil fuels, and as an alternative, as renewable energy, what you offer, we do not observe them as renewables, because they also have their own challenges, many problems, which is discussed a lot recently. Maybe there must be another way. There's going to be 6% of an economic growth by the investments. Are we actually not going to discuss it? Do we have to grow all the time? I mean, are we just not going to discuss? I mean, are we going to continue to abuse this world? So is it possible to fix the energy problem without finding a solution to economic growth? It's all LNG or the others, all that you're saying, this is all the problems that we live in our geography. These are major problems, as you all know, especially nuclear power, for example. Once you said it's a clean energy, if you're asking me, that's a problem. I'm from Trabzon, by the way, and I can tell you 30 people among my relatives that got cancer, so probably due to the Chernobyl nuclear power plant that occurred. 30 people that got cancer in my family, so nuclear power is not renewable energy in my opinion. Yes, please. Hello. Fred Guesh, you mentioned about Glasgow decisions on the top of this, first from Spain, then from Romania, with regards clawback mechanisms. It's all about the incentives given to renewables will be closed down. And once we are saying that with regards to fossil fuels, there will be less incentives, and therefore more renewable investments will be subsidized. France, for example, and there's the marginal price rise from the inventory. They are now moving to the average pricing, and let's continue over that. And last year, for example, in Texas, this time, Texas, California, we observed that the market dynamics were compared. In terms of the energy market dynamics, can we say that there is actually a change that is coming up? Thank you very much. Let's move to this side, then the other. Yes, please. You mentioned about the nuclear power, and that's actually a good approach in my opinion, because especially there are different reactor technologies, fourth generation, for example, reactors in particular, they are accepted as clean energy. A couple of weeks ago, NEA had a meeting, and both the NEA director and the OECD director had an announcement and stated that for the nuclear energy, in terms of clean energy, in terms of reaching the targets of 2035, it's actually shown as a good alternative. Therefore, that's the correct approach. IEN at the same time, in the General Council meeting, they also had a similar approach. Thank you. Maybe last two questions, because you know there is actually a panel, and I want to listen to it with very distinguished speakers. Yes, please. And from Solar Roof and Utku, in 2025, for the solar power installed capacity of Turkey, what level it must be, and what level it will reach in your opinion? Yes, please. Hello, Dr. Ethem Sefakaya. I'm an investor in renewable energy, and as an investor, I think climate change actually has both positive and negative impacts on me. We have 4 megawatt power plant, for example, and the generation capacities, for example, increasing every winter. But in an area that you will build a hydroelectricity power plant, actually we decided to make an investment, but we decided not to because of the rainfall there. What I'm trying to say is that since the industrial revolution, there's a carbon dioxide emission, carbon emission in the atmosphere. Once we reach to the net zero target, will the climate be back to normal, or do you think it will not make any change even if we get net zero target by 2050? If you allow me, maybe there are some other questions, but maybe after you can ask the other questions, because there's actually a good panel that we should listen to all together. So I will start with Cemalettin. Well, I think economic growth is not something bad in my opinion. And what is important is how you economically grow. Today, looking at, there are millions and billions of people expecting for economic growth in the world. And this is all about which countries will have economic growth and which energy technologies they'll be using. This is important. Of course, categorically saying that economic growth is not a good thing, it's not nice to say that. Why? Because we need a sustainable economic growth and at the same time an egalitarian. You're saying At the same time, for renewable energy, it's your, of course, call that renewable energy, you're against that. But there's something interesting about energy. There's no perfect solution. We're speaking about solar power, for example. Of course, it is not polluting the environment while generating electricity. But for the solar panels, how we are going to dispose them of? And that's a major issue, the solar panels. For coal, for natural gas, for example, there are some other issues, so there's no perfect solution. And the other question. Now, in Spain, in several other countries, the government, looking at the regular price increases with the natural gas, with oil, all the governments were in shock because of the increase in prices. So as to compromise, they actually take different measures. For example, some of the countries some of the countries are providing direct subsidy to the low-income parts of the society. And, for example, they reduce the energy prices for some of the low-income families. Some of the countries for renewable energy investments, for example, they make it, so like in France or in some other countries, they actually pass different regulations or these types of different approaches by different countries. And I'm sure that after the volatility is over in the electricity markets, just like the previous times, I believe, by taking into account the generation costs, and I'm sure that there will be a pricing system that is also based on environmental sensitivity. Speaking of Europe, of course, it might vary from one country to the other. In China, in Japan, it could be different. As speaking in terms of Europe, that's what I can say. As for the nuclear power, you are right. Again, the nuclear power, the wind is blowing for the nuclear power plant. It doesn't mean that will fix all problems, but looking at if you, for example, build traditional nuclear power plants, it will require so much capital. But small nuclear reactors, as you mentioned, there's actually a major market in this, in my opinion, even among the countries to export for this. They already started with a certain level of competition. North America, between Japan and European countries, there is a competition for export of these types of new nuclear power technologies. But of course, UK, France, and all the others are the leading countries, as you also mentioned from this perspective. Another question that you asked, the old balances. Now, whether we'll go back to normal or they go back to the former times, I don't actually understand what you actually mean by this, but I think there will be several changes in the energy world in terms of investment in particular. For example, looking at the clean energy options that we have and in the world, and looking at the capital in the world, in Europe, in North America, they somehow will meet there. There will be major investments there. But the point in here is, how about Asia, Africa, Latin America? How about the clean, whether the investors will be doing clean energy investments there or not, because the risk factor in such areas are different. For example, looking at what I hope as a decision to come out of Glasgow, what I expect is that the developed countries of $100 billion worth of an aid could be given by the developed countries, John Kelly. There is a group led by the former U.S. president, and $100 million for clean energy in the developing countries. I mean, making an investment. That's actually a commitment given in Paris. And hopefully in Glasgow they will declare that this will be the case. And that's what I hope until the end of this weekend, or that's my expectation, I can say. Any other question that I forget to answer? I feel like that's all. Yes, please, I think you insist on asking a question. I'm sorry for that. Okay, yes. You asked the question, by 2025, what will happen in Turkey? I cannot tell you as gigawatt, but Turkey, for solar power, there's actually a leap forward in Turkey for solar power. But even today, for the present time, in Turkey, I'm speaking about electricity generation. I mean, looking at the solar potential, we're just using 3% of the potential in Turkey for solar power. There's a huge potential, and we can use only 3%. Something that is much more important than this is that, especially over-the-roof solar panel technologies must be deployed all around the country. And this, for example, is a method that's very successful in several other countries, because this is actually self-generation. And therefore, Turkey, not only in terms of generating electricity, and at the same time at homes, at also industrial facilities, at schools, for example, or over the roof, the rooftop solar panels can be installed, and hopefully, looking at the countries around us, in terms of this, we can well be a country that can export the technologies for solar energy. We have great respect for our colleagues. So Ahmet Erdem is here, and there is actually a panel that he'll be chairing. Thank you very much.
Fatih Bey, biz indirmeyelim. Protokol orta kısmın bir...
Would you please, the first and the second row, would you please be on the stage? The first and the second row, would you please everyone be the protocol members on the stage, so we'll take a family photo all together.
Panelimizi doğrudan...
So we will immediately move to the panel. Now we'll start our panel on the business perspective, and Country Chair Shell Turkey Ahmet Erdem will be moderating the panel. We have Sinan Ak, CEO of Zorlu Enerji, Borusan Holding CEO Erkan Kafada, TPS Country Leader from Baker Hughes Merve Öztunç, Sanko Enerji CEO Hakan Yıldırım, and Sabancı Holding Energy Group President Kıvanç Zaimler, please.
de her zamanki gibi.
So, as always, it's been quite an enlightening speech. Thank you very much. I would like to thank for this presentation. Now, of course, climate change, as you all know, is a topic that is on the agenda of each and every country, each and every region, and each and every corporate. As Mr. Birol also stated, the main reason for this is the emissions due to energy consumption. Therefore, for IICEC in particular, whatever, all the activities that they are doing, all the efforts by IICEC, they are so important. So we'll be speaking about the global energy and climate trends and implications on Turkey. I'm sure that for myself, I mean, looking at my professional life and personal life, I think there's actually no living thing that is not affected from climate change. Same for the countries, for any specific group or region. We're living on this planet, and it affects every single living being on this planet. I think there's also another point in here. This is actually the outcome of the things that started from the history, the Industrial Revolution, and so on. But we're at such a point that we have to fix this problem, find a solution for this, because this is actually a huge responsibility over our generations. I don't know, it could be so many different corporates or newly established companies, but I think that is the responsibility of each and every one of us. Of course, today, as you all know, we probably will understand better after the decisions of Glasgow are declared, but joint collaboration and governmental commitments, these are also important. And for example, after ratification of the Paris Agreement and the law passed the parliament, that's a very important step taken by the Turkish government. And of course, it is also nice to know that the previous talks also completed. That's something promising for us. From the perspective of the Turkish economy, looking at the other countries or different group of countries, they at the same time will take several measures for global trade, which is also important as an implication on Turkey's economy. As you all know, Turkey is #1 cement supplier of Europe and #3 supplier of iron and steel, and in aluminium supply #7, and therefore, as you all know, Turkey is playing a major role on this, and therefore, I'm just I will give 5 minutes for each speaker, and we'll make 2 rounds, but I understand that we're a little bit flexible in the agenda. Maybe we should not keep this so tight, but within an hour or an hour and 15 minutes, I just wanted to complete the round. I will start with Erkan, if possible. Of course, Borusan Holding has both the industry and the energy side, and therefore we actually will have the chance for a dual perspective. Of course, we can touch upon the energy side as well, but with regards to industry, industrial facilities, from that perspective, would you please provide us with a snapshot, and especially what are the implications on you? I also would like to thank Güler Sabancı for hosting us this event, and Fatih Birol for the informative talk. Of course, we're all discussing about energy and so on, but I think I am the person with the least information about energy. As Ahmet Erdem stated, I think I have to provide you a more comprehensive perspective. Of course, energy that we have, but also we have logistics and industry and distributor. Therefore, we're just managing a portfolio. As Borusan Holding, of course, with climate, the most important point for us is sustainability. For me, I would say when I hear the word sustainability, I hear about continuity. For example, continuity from like the continuity of the generations. And therefore, I think it's just back to our lives with the term sustainability. Therefore, how we handle sustainability in our group, that's what I would like to mention about. Why? Because all the business models and everything is actually tied to that. And maybe as an answer to your question, there is a transformation in all industries. And we actually have to well manage this transformation. At Borusan Holding, we call it 3I: climate, human, and innovation. And there is actually a multiplying effect, so we call it actually an IQ. So human, innovation, and climate. Maybe I can elaborate more on this. As you all know, the human is the core factor. And for each enterprise to evolve, there is the need for the competency and capabilities of the human factor, and we're always trying to improve this. The second I, that is innovation, from human to innovation, then this time the industries, the dynamics are changing all the time. And so as to catch up with this impetus, I think the number one factor is the human factor. That is followed by, and I've just seen a cartoon that I will tie to it. Maybe last week you also said two people are chatting, one saying, are you just worried about the development of AI? I am not. I'm just, I have the fear that there will be the regression of the normal intellect, not the artificial, or it will regress. So human factor is the most important thing. So it is the innovation, as I told you, changes so fast, and to catch up with this change, I think innovation, as you know, is like a cliche that we use all the time. If you're asking, it's all about managing the change and trying to catch up with the speed of the changing requirements. If you're asking me, each change also brings different opportunities. And as I told you previously, it is the human factor that helps us to make the innovation. And maybe for your first question, as an answer to your first question, of course, I think the topic that can be linked to climate is steel. And there's a Green Deal last year was announced, and also carbon taxation at the border. The beginning of 2026 it will start, especially in iron and steel as one of the industries. And the others are ceramics and glass and cement. So, of course, iron and steel, as you stated, we are a major player of Europe and a major exporter. And last week, the export statistics published, and for Turkey, iron and steel is a major item of export, especially because of the increase in commodity prices. And of course, the total created value is increasing. About the carbon taxation at the border, it will be introduced to our lives. And of course, as you all know, is in 2018 during the Trump administration, and probably so many people know it, there's a 232, an application started, practice started, there's an import tax. And also Europe had a similar tax like the carbon border tax, and now there's the carbon border tax this time. Of course, Europe is our major market, together with several other products. And it's very important for us to have harmonization with the practices in Europe. I think that is the point where the private sector should very well cooperate with the public. The public-private partnership is so important. I mean, it is very important. If we have a harmonization, the taxes will stay in Turkey, and it will go back come back as an investment. Otherwise, this carbon border tax I mean, will come out of our pocket and then will be added into the opportunities of the European Union. So we should do the harmonization to the extent possible so that we can actually preserve the tax. And it actually must be used so as to give support to the industry here in the country. And of course, we always calculate our risks. And I think we have an important project to mention about this. Product and service-based carbon tracking system. It has a long name actually, but as you all know, there's going to be, if there's going to be a carbon tax for each and every product, then there will be some non-financial accounting that will be introduced. So you have to calculate for carbon tax for each and every product, and those who cannot calculate for this will fail. And therefore, what we're trying to do in here in this project is we can calculate the carbon coming from our own production and therefore minimizing the carbon at the source. Of course, that is actually a value chain and at the same time a supply chain, and therefore the industries that are integrated before us and after us, therefore to make an overall calculation for the carbon burden. And for example, we are focusing on self-consumption investments right now. For example, rooftop solar panels could be one thing. And with the new regulation, especially in defined regions for wind energy investments could be possible, because in iron and steel, unfortunately, is an energy-intensive industry, as you all know. And as for the taxation, and especially with regards to green credit, there could be financing facilities for the green credit. That's what we're looking for. And I'm sure that the other players in our industry are also following these facilities. Why? Because if you would like to manage a change, a transformation, you need resources for this, both in the steel and in the automotive. In 2021, we actually had the opportunity to have access to these financing. And on the top of this, we live in the same ecosystem. I have to underline this. Therefore, collaboration is of importance. Just like we believe in cooperation and collaboration among different companies, same for within our holding, as the Borusan Holding. For holding companies, we do the Turkish distribution of several, vehicles, and more electric vehicles are being introduced to the Turkish market nowadays. So same, for example, for those who purchase a vehicle, they do certification as the energy company. So both at home and with their, at homes and with their cars, they actually have access to more favorable energy through a certificate that they get. So that's an answer to your first question. Thank you.
Well, then I would like to turn to Mr. Ak now. We have energy-intensive industries on one side, and on the other side we have, on top of the existing technologies, the need to incorporate extra new technologies, one being hydrogen. Now, from hydrogen, what is your perspective for Turkey? Thank you. To be able to reach net zero, Turkey set a deadline in parallel to Europe, obviously, because this is what we generally do. Although we follow maybe from a distance, we, in time, get a better adaptation to technologies ourselves with lower prices. Yes, they are developing technology, but we are more eager to use technology. I think the most important element there is hydrogen fuels, as agreed in Europe. And in the last 2 years' time, particularly in the energy sector, this has been the field that attracted the most investments. In other words, hydrogen fuels attracted most of the investments together with applications in technology. A month ago, there was the Global Hydrogen Conference in Amsterdam. I attended that conference, and I can say that hydrogen is such a product that can be used at all dimensions. I mean, can be used in different fields. You can burn it, you can recycle it, storage can be longer, easier, will not be lost, so on and so forth. So cement and iron and steel industries need to be greened. For them to come to net zero level, hydrogen fuels, I think, are extremely important due to transportability, to the point of the facilities, extremely important. High bars, 700 bars, should be used for transportation of such. Therefore, there are really major investments there, because when this happens, particularly in buses, trolleys and sea vehicles can be used efficiently. So quite naturally, as Turkey, if we are #1 in cement and iron and steel, therefore we need to find ways of accessing to green in these industries. So this is my starting point. We are a good company in geothermal, and we can generate green energy 24/7. So it's, I think, an advantage for us to switch to hydrogen, as we have started several activities to that end. And it's not an easy job to reach green hydrogen. Russians developed blue hydrogen and hydrogen out of natural gas. But as far as I can see, in Europe, and particularly in France, there is an incredible trend towards green hydrogen, which is quite interesting if you ask me, and I didn't know until I went to the conference. France is a country that is open to many seas because of its presence in Pacific Islands. The capacity to generate natural hydrogen belongs to them as well. If in the ultrasonic ocean they want to, or they manage to transport hydrogen, the Americas and Far East, I can say, can be supplied from there. It's not merely producing from green energy, but at the same time by natural ways. As a country, of course, what we need to do is, to my knowledge, there is nothing going on there. I mean, there is no subsidy system or somehow about it. But together with maybe actions taken in the near future, I think it must be brought to Turkey as well, obviously. So as a group, we are also planning and investing, or maybe we are in search of the potential investments in hydrogen, how we can do it, how we can proceed in that direction. There are other fields of application, particularly in Nordic countries. All through summer, they store hydrogen from solar, and then they are working on how to use it in winter time. This can be the case. There is an incredible potential, particularly in Konya. We have the chances of converting fields into this purpose. So as you get into it, I'm sure that we will find other options. As a Swiss knife, hydrogen is quite interesting. So the future lies in hydrogen, in my opinion. Yes, thank you. Shell, that I'm a part of, has hydrolysis and hydrogen facility that has been commissioned, which is quite exciting. And before turning an eye on Shell, I would like to give the floor to Merve Öztunç. Net zero, as we proceed into that direction, how do you see the developments, and where do you stand there? The microphone is not working. Well, welcome. And Madame Sabancı, thank you very much for your hospitality. And it's an honor for me to be with the distinguished representatives of the sector, including Dr. Birol. IICEC As a woman representative of the sector, I would like to thank IICEC for the kind invitation and would like to say a note before I start on that. As a woman in the entire sector, both in my company and in the industry, I think we should be taking position and strengthening our positions as women leaders, and it's really pleasing to have colleagues in the leader positions. I'm proud to applaud that. It's not about gender equality, but diversity. And the system is an inclusive one. Differences should be heard. Only then we can find more creative solutions to global problems. Okay, turning to your question, Mr. Erdem. As Baker Hughes company, we've been involved in oil and natural gas business for more than a century. And we are at the same time an energy technology company. As previously said by Mr. Birol, initially, I mean, it's been the role of energy sector to kick off the climate crisis, and we're aware of our responsibilities as a representative of the sector. We've been taking really important initiatives as a part of corporate policies, plus Paris climate commitments. Our mission is to use current technologies to reduce emission ratios, paving the way for carbon-free investments in the future. Today, the only question we're asking is, how can we respond to the increasing energy demand in a more uninterrupted way, in a more clean way? So this is a question that we've been looking into answers. Technology innovation is the only answer to that question, no doubt. But in that respect, in oil and natural gas sector, there have been some changes going on with an implication on the economic volatility. If you ask me, it would be because of somehow resistance to change in the sector. But we must overcome this resistance. There are three realities ahead of us, and Baker Hughes wants to emphasize these three options. The first of these options is that today we are going in a fixed pace, but net zero targets, I think, will be unlikely to meet if there is somehow an accelerated effort. Although we are quite in good intention to lay down objectives for the Paris Convention, this will not happen. For that, we need bilateral or dual strategies. One is to use current technologies, and the next is to invest in future technologies. Another thing is dependence on fossil fuels and energy efficiency. Although again, renewables are quite interesting, and people are eager to switch to renewable energy resources. I think at least, even in the most aggressive scenarios, we do see that within 30 years, we will have to meet the increasing energy demand with hydrocarbons. In that respect, we do see the position of natural gas quite critical. Therefore, the emission-lowering efficient technologies should be concentrated on, plus the hydrogen, carbon, and such other solutions for storage must be considered. And finally, it is a fact that unless we work collectively, energy generators, producers, suppliers, transporters, I mean, it will not be possible for any party in the sector to meet the targets. As Baker Hughes, there are three strategies or strategic plannings that we are running. The first one is to make current technologies as competitive as possible and to deliver them to the market. plus industrial natural gas facilities and turbines should be more efficient. Secondly, with digital transformation, we need to digitalize systems. And the third, hydrogen, geothermal, and carbon storage and energy storage technologies must be invested. Thank you. Well, thank you, Mrs. Öztunç. And moving to Hakan Yıldırım. What do you think? Net zero, do you think it is possible? You have many investments there as Sanko Energy, and you've been investing in renewables for some time. As Fatih Birol referred to some framework facilities, the biggest rooftop solar panels were launched by your company. What do you think about net zero targets? Thank you, Chairman. By the way, I would like to start by thanking IICEC team. After a long time, you've brought us together as the representatives of the sector. We are thankful to you. And I'm speaking in a panel in front of Fatih Birol. I was planning my presentation yesterday, and I thought, what should I say? It's rather not statistics, and would not even touch upon to electric wheels if you have the panel, the names in the panel speaking. I first would like to thank Mrs. Sabancı and Mr. Birol for their leadership. Yes, we've been running those discussions about climate, mostly on the grounds of technology. If you ask me, technology and investment are, yes, important elements and aspects of climate change, but they're not propellants. I think leadership is quite important. We need people who would leave their own agenda aside and try and convince people as to what the solutions might be there. So we need leaders. As Mr. Birol referred to in his presentation, this is an era that is ever-precedented, an ever-precedented event. Who might have gone through that kind of events? Because people say history is all about recurrence, but it's not about recurrence. You would make the same mistakes if you don't read. So you may as well be in the position that you think you would never be in. Essentially, a century ago, at the time of Independence War, again, it was a time, an unprecedented time. There was a major threat coming, and very well equipped, trained military people, politicians, bureaucrats saw the threat coming, and now we're speaking about the threat to come in a few decades. And they saw that the country would be devastated in a few years' time, writing books, addressing to people. Many things lacked back in those days, but they all agreed that there was lack of a leader in the country. And that leader, putting aside his own life, his own priorities, thought about and prioritized the future generations, stepped a foot on Samsun, told people what the problem is, what the solution would be, tangibly, locked the entire nation around him and resolved the problem. It was not weapons or military that was missing back in those days. And today it's not money, it's not technology that is missing. It is just one thing that can save the nations in an approaching threat. You know, the housewives, bosses, children, young people, old people, every professional should have a good understanding of what the problem is and should put the willingness of doing something And those 100 years ago, those people put their lives at stake, put themselves at fire, and we're now here in a peaceful room talking about those future priorities. Now let's ask about ourselves. Where does climate change stand in our personal agenda? Technology, money, it can all be found. Money is abundant, but it's not to solve the problem. If it were, it would already have solved the problem. This problem will be solved by individuals gathering around leaders, putting aside their own personal agendas. We are investing in renewables, hydrogen, many other fuels we are trying to discover, synchronize ourselves in that direction. We want to make investments in new geographies, but on the other side, we keep thinking that it is important for the individuals, for the society, to have a collective understanding and, of course, an economic setting that people would support it. Can we open up our chakras? And because I see the problem as something that is being attributed to international energy agencies, maybe NGOs, maybe governments, but rather I think we can solve the problem only if this problem and solution will be brought down to individuals, and they would also contribute to the solution of the problem. Thank you. Yes, that's true. Unless we have that kind of leadership, it will really be hard for us to stop it, because it's really multi-tier, very complex issue. Turning to Kıvanç Zaimler this time. About transformation, we are seeing implications already, but it's not a single tier, but 2, 3, 4 multi-layered concepts. It is engaged in climate change, personal, personal commitment, 3G. I mean, you can make a triangle, a rectangle, all aspects considered. What can you say? That's an inspiring talk, Hakan. But after your inspirational talk, I will be quite pessimistic. So it says on the title, implications on Turkey. So we should give a perspective for Turkey. Let me make things simple. On a triangle, climate change, environment. On the other end, cost attached to this change. And on the other end, there is the supply security. So it's a triangle, but it's a trilemma. Not a dilemma, but a trilemma that we are speaking here. And in economics, it is named as the impossible tripartite relationship. And if you cannot maximize every purpose, so you need to make an optimization. And if we start on one pillar of the triangle with energy and climate change, of course, it would be inevitable for all of us to, show efforts to try and solve it, because as a global citizen, there are many implications on us, including economy, including politics, historical evolution we've discussed. And when we come to the year 2500, a virus coming up again, there will be again climate change going on, because we keep speaking about climate change in the last 50 years. And in Glasgow, people made an agreement. It's important that Turkey ratify it as well. Also in the legislation, in economy, in trade, there will be a lot of changes going on in our daily lives in Turkey. You know, there is this caricature, 3 kids watching a sports match behind a wall. Only one of them is tall enough to see the fields, and they put on wooden boxes under their feet to equalize their height, to be able to watch the match the same way. Equality and justice. Anyone who loves his nation and country, as myself, I really feel deeply sorry about what is going on, because now there is a priority for all of us to be a global citizen rather than the citizen of Turkey. And we should make commitments individually, each of us, because the issue about climate change is not about supporting it, or it's not about grasping it. It's somehow about not allowing its misuse and abuse. Yes, there will be barriers before trade, different certifications required for trade, but there will be a lot of commercial barriers, and we need to be generous coming to that point of resolution. Coming to the third pillar, cost attached to it, we said, this is going to be huge transformation, $100 billion of an annual budget. But where will it come from? Will it come from international budgets, national budgets, or will it be us as energy consumers who will be contributing to the sharing of that cost? Today, there is a free market economy in energy sector. Without harming this, at this point of stance, we know how subsidies make harm, because in Turkey we've been subsidizing energy prices for many years, and we were unfair to industrialists because we didn't let them pay for the real cost, and we didn't prepare them for the real conditions. And we're running the heaters and at homes, and at the same time we were opening the windows, and nobody is investing in energy now. It's the supply safety. Now we've been talking about the legislation, and we want the public to build thermal power plants. The initial task of the public is to make sure there is energy security. Why would they do it? Because the private sector would avoid making such investments. Therefore, the public should question why they are avoiding. Why are we not preparing the investors for that environment? Now the supply security is at stake. And the other day we were attending a panel with Ahmet, and then we cut the electricity. We told people, okay, let's make a decision. Will it be the coal power plant because it's cheaper, and it was cheaper back in that time, and it's still cheaper, but there will be more carbon footprint, or natural gas power plants? It's more expensive, less carbon footprint, but the alternative is to sit in the darkness. And this triple discussion, climate, cost attached to it, and supply security must be managed together, which is the impossible triad. But there is only one goal there. There are commitments to it, financial aspects, human aspects, but the only thing we can stop this equation is technology and equation. This impossibility can only be possible only if we evolve ourselves on a technology basis, collaborating with the public, with industry, with academia. Thank you.
Actually, you've been very crystal clear in your expressions. That's really the fact for the energy markets, also for all markets, of course. But as we are speaking about the energy, I'm just giving a reference to this. I think it is the interventions that is the major risk, because once there's no free market, then the private sector cannot possibly have some sustainable results for this. For sustainability, that's a major risk. Therefore, we always have to keep this in mind while we're speaking about the long-term issues. But we said technology and innovation and digitalization as well. I would like to get back to Sinan. By the way, we're starting the second round of the panel. In the second round, I'm just not going to only ask the question, but we may not have a third round, so if you have some additional comments, also please mention it. So, digitalization, technology, Internet of Things, blockchain, and so on, how these will contribute to the solution, and do you think there are some advantages and disadvantages for Turkey from this perspective? Thank you very much. Maybe I have to continue from where Kıvanç left. He's totally right about what he said. I mean, once the state intervene more than necessary in terms of the, for example, intervention to the market prices and so on, if unnecessary intervention by the state actually impedes the private sector in terms of making more investments. And it's going to be much more complicated. Why? As Fatih Birol stated, the major investors in particular they are reluctant to, for example, make investments or coal-powered power plants, for example, because it's a dying sector. I mean, within 30 years, we're saying that the coal and natural gas power plants will be shut down until 2050 for all. And it means that maybe we're just speaking about an investment that will not be consumed until it is end. I mean, if these power plants are used for 50 years, then it will actually just be operational for 15 years, not more than that. I mean, the ones that will be newly established. So there is a need to actually apply new tariffs, because without these tariffs, it's not possible for us to have these investments, and not by the private sector at all. What the private sector is doing, as you all know, this crisis, the energy crisis at the global level, with the increase in the prices, and the industrialists in particular have realized the risks. For example, there is 50% of a price increase for natural gas for industrial use in Turkey last month, and of course it is reflected onto the costs. And therefore, immediately, for example, as Kıvanç also stated, the price that is not priced properly, once reached to its actual price, so people are now thinking about how I can have a rooftop solar panel for my house. And there is a for the solar panels, almost 6 gigawatt. Probably it will be more than 2,000 megawatt. Solar panel, of course, if people can find solar panels, because in supply of solar panels there is a major issue. But last year, 200,000 megawatts of solar panels installed worldwide. We're saying that we need a transformation, a major transformation. This is not something that we can do on the solar power plants. So there is the need for 1.5 to 2 million megawatts a year, 200,000 done last year. I mean, it's quite a big difference if we can use these types of personal effort. China started to consume all solar panels on its own. China is not exporting the solar panels, and there's a steady increase in price panels. It was 20 cents for solar panel, for example, this last year, but now it is up to 35 cents. It will increase more. It's all about the supply and demand balance. There is an imbalance in supply and demand, and that's incredible. And of course, as we have also started to use them, 3 years ago, for example, there were only 46 producers in Turkey, but now it's, I think, over 10,000. And it's just going to be over 1 million in the upcoming 10 years. Therefore, everyone in Turkey will become a producer, I would say. And I actually talked to an inverter company, and we actually received the rights, we purchased the rights. And I get the solar panel, you put the inverter, you plug in, and you start to generate electricity. It's that much easier to generate electricity now with the solar panel. And therefore, the extra generated electricity must be sold somehow, and depending on the supply and the demand, someone should actually purchase it. And when there are so many producers or consumers at the same time, there will be internal effects that we will have rather than externals. Now we'll have internals. So maybe in the digital virtual environment, via digitalization, there will be like a sales for the self-generation. That's inevitable in the upcoming 10 years. I mean, 3 or 5 years ago, we were saying what would happen to Bitcoin, whether it is something that we may use in the future or not. But today, it's actually something that is attracting the attention of so many people for Bitcoin. If I'm not mistaken, it is $1.2 trillion, the worth of Bitcoin. So it is $2 to $3 trillion, including not only Bitcoin but the others. I think it is $11 trillion. That is actually the supply for gold. So it's just going in the direction that it will be replaced. I mean, change positions. Therefore, the technology will be integrated into the banking system soon, and not possible that it will be a part of the energy system as well. And those who are the first to do this will also be the leader, both for Turkey and the world. And it's also a bit of staying away from regulation. I mean, the supply and demand is like in an independent environment. And of course, a pH seems to be a little bit, maybe much more independent, but still there is some sort of state engagement also in a pH. So there will be actually some different movements for the supply and the demand. So it means that there will be more investments, and maybe there would be a much better balance. So we'll see all together. Thank you, Sinan Ak. Erkan Kafadar meant we're going to the Internet of Electrics, and in particular with regards to rooftop solar panels and so on. He touched upon that. How about your own portfolio? Because wind is much more dominant in your portfolio. How about at which level of the capacity we are at wind, and what could be the obstacles that we may have in the future? As you mentioned, in our portfolio, 90% of our portfolio is of the investments for wind energy. And between 2008 to 2020, looking at that period, and 10,000 megawatts of investment made so far in Turkey. But looking at the ongoing projects, in particular, the YEKDEM, the regulation and the incentives was about to expire, so we commissioned almost all power plants before the end of the regulation, expiry of the regulation. There could be a decline in the near future, but for capacity, in terms of capacity, Fatih Birol stated that we're using only 3% of our solar potential as Turkey. For wind, if I'm not mistaken, it's just 10% of the capacity of our potential that we use. I mean, 100,000 megawatts of the potential capacity that there is. It was 48 to 50,000 previously, but thanks to the new technology, as there's an increase in efficiency, and therefore looking at the areas favorable for investment, it is almost 100,000. This is corresponding to theoretically the entire energy demand of Turkey. As it was discussed, the future, there will be major transformations in the future, and from fossil fuels will move to the new energy systems. If we are going to do this, I mean, for Turkey, even wind alone would be enough, or even solar energy would only be enough. We have this at one side, but on the other side, looking at the investments, there are very few investments in the renewables. Or, of course, each subsidy is a problem. I totally agree with you. Especially I'm in the business, we are in the steel business for 30 years, and we know how protectionist interventions would result in inefficiency. and we know about the cons of protectionist approaches. As also Hakan stated, if actually we have such a leader, not only for Turkey but for the world, but until we have such a leader, we all have a lot to assume as a responsibility. I think we have to be working together with the public. It's not protectionist prices or so that we are speaking about in here. It's all about you need a climate that is supportive of investment. It's okay, there's too much money in the world, too many numbers that you express, but looking at the financing requirements of Turkey and the financing facilities for Turkey, it's not too much. If you go out of Turkey, go to the States, go to Europe, there's too much money around everywhere. And somehow Turkey is receiving this money, but either the cost is high or the money is not coming in the form that you want. And of course, everyone assumes responsibility for the future, but there is also the responsibility assumed once you make such an investment. So at least some minimum criteria must be met for you to make an investment. Looking at the existing available projects, with, for example, wind power project, you go to a bank, it's not possible for you to have the same financing conditions. I mean, it's not bankable anymore. If we would like to finance the projects, even if it is less than the previous years, but still important, it was 80-85% of credit taken. And for investments, maybe it goes down to 60-65 today, but it's a driving force. And it can actually attract investors, and therefore the green, it could be green financing, or, for example, carbon tax issue, using carbon tax in Turkey. And if we somehow have to face this problem and check for the cost of it, and because in a sense, the solar and wind potential of Turkey is so high. Of course, hydrogen can be a solution in the long run, and especially solar investments can cause some trouble in the future, we know. Same actually for electric vehicles as well. And therefore, we have a way to go, but we have a road to go, but we should do the roadmap together. And two more things I would like to mention. With regards hybrid investments for the upcoming years, which I think so important. I mean, for example, bringing solar and wind power together, hybrid energy, 100 megawatts of hybrid system that we will have, which is important in my opinion. And the other thing is that today, for example, energy prices are so high, in supply and demand imbalance is so much, and therefore also the mechanical power or capacity of the installed capacity can be forced more, so we can possibly generate more energy than the potential, but it's a decision that must be given by the public sector. But I think especially for this is what is required for today, in my opinion. Thank you. Erkan. Of course, the cost of transformation in particular, at one side of the medal, and on the other side of the medal, this is the cost of not transforming. So either cost of transforming or not transforming. I think this is an issue that we should consider all together at the local and global level. Merve Öztunç, for digitalization, innovation, new technologies that you mentioned about. So my question is, all these new technology and innovations, for them to be adopted, what type of collaboration is required? Do you have such an experience? That's my question, because once again, I just wanted to underline the importance of collaboration. Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Erdem. Now, of course, our commitments, internal commitments, are so important. So until 2030, there will be 50% of a reduction in our carbon footprint. And by 2050, net zero by 2050. That's the target that we set. And we invest in technology. Innovation is so important. And we can speak about a dual strategy here. And we need a dual strategy, as I also mentioned previously. Independent from fuel, we are just aiming at reducing emissions. And by using the technology of today, we provide support to the energy producers for efficient, for example, gas turbine manufacturing, cogen testing with some digital solutions, plus smart asset management and automation systems that we offer. And second of all, it's the net zero. What's critical for net zero target? We identify four main topics, one being hydrogen. Hydrogen, for Baker Hughes, it's not a new technology. In 1960s, 100% hydrogen fuel gas turbines already produced by Baker Hughes. And in 2008 in Italy, 100% hydrogen powered gas turbine correcting power plant that we installed. And carbon capture and storage facilities that I also will mention about. But again, the carbon capture technologies in terms of compressor stations, these are not actually different known technologies to us. We have ongoing investments on this. Mostly when compared to hydrogen from commercial perspective, there is a need for time, but it's just one of our focus areas. The other thing is methane emission. Methane, which actually has an impact on emission, and drone and land-based methane capture systems that we are working on, and we offer these solutions. Other than that, as for collaborations, as mentioned, collective working is a must, as you mentioned. And in the field of hydrogen in particular, the gas hybrid gas turbine tested. The gas with Sinec Italy, the major gas operator in Italy, we successfully tested it, and with Snag company, 5 million tons of carbon dioxide emission is targeted to be reduced on an annual basis. And again, with Tech company, in their LNG operations, again, liquefied natural gas and hydrogen mix powered operations are used. And for the use of hydrogen, we also signed an agreement with them. Again, for energy transformation, so as to for a role of hydrogen with Bloom Energy, again, we have a cooperation. So in the field of hydrogen, as I told you, we will continue. And of course, also with Plug Child at $60 million US. We are just planning to make an investment so we can actually empower the hydrogen economy. For with regards to carbon capture, with a compact carbon capture company, we merged with them, and therefore for more efficient capturing of carbon, and so that we could actually be much more competitive, and so as to introduce in more competitive prices in carbon storage and carbon storage processing. Also, there's the mixol process for carbon capture, for more efficiency, And again, in terms of investment costs, we have introduced the modular technology. We invest on this while reducing investment costs. At the same time, we're just trying to improve the operations and the field services and operations. Besides, as I told you, there's a Mixol project in a license agreement with SRI International Company. We signed an agreement and we continue to work on this. Now, from Turkey, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have to, because we also have distinguished members of the press with us. We, of course, as the panel, we wish to have you here, and we would love to listen to you more and more, but Fatih Birol has a press meeting downstairs, and it's about to start, so for the members of the press who would like to join it, they have to join. Yes, I'm sorry to interrupt, Merve, but you can continue. So lastly, Turkey, after ratification of the new Paris Agreement by Turkey, in terms of I think energy efficiency is now at the top of the agenda for Turkey. And by the end of September, as the minister also mentioned in the fair, with regards to cogen facilities for waste, they declared their support and called for the market, and therefore, so as to reduce emissions and for use of efficient technologies and energy, I think Turkey at the same time will be taking major steps on this. Besides that, Sakarya, again, natural gas reserve discovered. Of course, Turkey, again, is on the way to be an important natural gas supplier, also for Europe. So efficient technologies will be very important. Thank you very much.
Teşekkür ederiz. Hep
Well, thank you. It's a long list of doables. Hopefully, technological advancements and collaborations will all help us get to that point. Well, after that discussion, Hakan Yıldırım, what do you think particularly about renewable energy? Would you expect more renewable investment coming? What stages do you think we should be going through, and what would trigger that? Well, in Turkey, as the stakeholders, investors, public bureaucrats, funding parties, all of us, we should come together and discuss what is to change, because Turkey has become an open university. We've built 50,000 megawatts of installed capacity in wind and hydro. We can take a leading position. It's not just for building the investment. Like 15 years ago, if we were again in this hall and ask geothermal, solar, hydro, wind all together, anyone, how many of you would just believe in it? Not doers, but believers even, were just minority. Now, the majority of our sectoral parties have graduated from this open university, and we've gained a lot of skills. We know how to develop, make, build, operate a project, how to manufacture parties, and 75% of local content has been reached in wind today. 40, 50 different factories are serving 4 modules, and it's not the time to stop or to complain or to just halt and think, elaborate. Now we have to make our heads clear. After this point, what is our final destination, we should say. I'm telling you this because currently there is no doable project stock in the hands of the investors now. 3,000, 2,000 megawatts of a solar power plant being developed in the world. We don't have it. Yes, we have projects on paper, and the investors are just getting good tenders with low prices, but in a way they're blocked and it's not coming true. And by a single move, you can increase 1,000 megawatts of your installed capacity. And especially in August, which is the peak time for Turkey's needs, our wind power cannot produce 20 megawatts because we have to cut it. This way, 800, 1,000 of megawatt of installed capacity is present in Turkey. So we need to make our heads clear. What do we want to do? Not only in installation, but there is also the fact of creating a base demand for it. And if you want to go into the technological direction, we need to make that clear. In wind, solar, technology providers are there. If there is no local market, like for the blades or for the tower, we cannot keep people there. We've had two problems in a single day, sir. On one side, the geothermal plant was asked to stop, generation. On the other hand, a hydro power plant was asked to undertake extra load because it's about optimization. Our colleagues at TIH really worked so hard not to leave us without electricity, but now Turkey has to overcome these problems. Yes, wind is blowing too hard, so the transport capacity is limited. We cannot transfer and convey it if it's beyond 6,000 or 7,000, and we have to stop it from working. I think we need to change it in the coming few years. If you want to make more use of the potential, the first thing we need to do is to increase connectivity. Then we should encourage the investors to install new facilities. And there are actually the capabilities that we have to create value in very critical positions, but we need a consensus to reach about what we need to do. About a leader, we need a leader, yes, but what I say is we need more leaders, not just one, because this war has several frontiers, and not just one. Private sector, banks, advisors, I think they should be there also as a consensus. Thank you. Okay, Kıvanç, just a similar question, maybe a continuous question from there. Can I get your input there? How to advance your capacity with the existing technology, operational issues, as discussed in the capacity optimization discussion. And on the path to net zero, to be able to walk together, how would you see the relationship between the private and the public sectors? Would you have any suggestion as to how we can improve that? Well, thank you. Inspired by Hakan, I can say that leadership is important, yes, but in many other aspects, in Sabancı Holding and other group of companies, there are commitments being laid and roadmaps, interim targets will be announced. We need to increase the number of our leaders, and of course the public should be involved in it. I was called for a meeting at the ministry this afternoon. It's really important to note it everywhere. But energy is so important to be the tool of politics or economics. Unfortunately, energy issues or prices are discussed in more popularistic ways as a tool of politics, the government, or all levels of the politics are discussing about electricity prices, gas prices as a political material, but essentially we're not getting deep down into the core of the discussion. I think energy should no longer be the government policy, should be the state policy. Therefore, together with the government, I think private sector should be working together. Many of you would know it, but maybe you don't know it, that in August there were days that we ran out of energy. And the responsible responsibility is not on today's administration. It's about the fact that we didn't invest in the system 5-10 years ago. Private sector avoided such investments, and the public sector agreed. And there is one key word to say there, predictability, and also confidence. You should also know about the ways of creating confidence. What we need to do is to give predictability to these markets. And today, the only way to create predictability happens not only by public or the government, but rather in collaboration with the private sector, academia. What is to change the equilibrium or the formulation is storage technologies, but we're lacking any agreed upon storage technology right now. So it's an interim solution indeed. What will be a game changer is the hydrogen. For hydrogen today, the average prediction is 10 years. If you go to Germany, it's 30 years. Before 30 years, it wouldn't be a reality. Can we do it earlier? There are innovative technologies developing all the time, but the most important technological evolutions take place at the time of crisis. Remember the time of the Second World War. I mean, all the elements, instruments, military innovations were triggered by the conditions of the war, which is a crisis. So if you feel crisis, that would probably trigger innovation. So all the stakeholders of the game, including public, private sector, academia, I think should set off in that direction altogether to make a commitment. Thank you. Well, thank you, all of you, all the attendees. I don't know how you would feel, but it's been quite a useful, a very fruitful discussion, panel discussion. Above all, we've had competent people speaking about the transformation, which is a must for energy and climate change. We've heard the representatives and leaders of companies having already set off in that direction. Therefore, the future plans probably will be quite inspiring for all of us in our corporate plannings. For these to be true, to come true, we need collaboration, cooperation, solidarity, both within and outside the sector, meaning in our relations with the public, we should take some distance. There will be a cost attached to this transformation, but the cost would be more if we don't transform for our planet, for our countries, for our individuals. Therefore, we should try and make the cost rather a value for ourselves. So we're in need of some mechanisms to have this, or maybe to facilitate this exchange of opinions. Many platforms are present to be able to do that, and IICEC included in one of them. And I would like to say that IICEC is a wonderful brainstorming platform where people will get together and collaborate, and this is being verified with the events, with the activities of IICEC. You know, IICEC is affiliated to Sabancı University, and a very decisive path is followed by IICEC to reach the net zero goals, and would like to congratulate also the board of the university having invested time and money into that. Hopefully this is going to be the direction that we all will pursue. Would like to thank all of the panelists and to you all, ladies and gentlemen, for your presence. Have a nice day.